I am so excited to be here at the Institute of Culinary Education with James Briscione and talking about his new book, The Flavor Matrix.
The Flavor Matrix.
So this book is kind of nuts, and the reason why we're talking about it and not cooking from it is because it's just such an overwhelming concept, because you are really trying to change the entire way we view flavor, which sounds like a lot of BS, but it really, this really is. So explain the concept of this book.
So, this started for me about 5 years ago working with IBM Chef Watson here at ICE when we began the Chef Watson project. And I realized I didn't really understand flavor as well as I should.
It's not great for a chef.
As a chef.
Yeah.
But I realized that most chefs don't, and most cooks don't, and the chemistry and the science of what we perceive when we take a bite of food, we understand what things go together, but we don't always understand why. And we wanted to explain the why.
And so why do certain, let's talk about that why, because I think when you look through this book, there are some flavor combinations where you're like, oh, mushrooms and chocolate, that's interesting, but why?
When you take a bite of food, about 80% of what you perceive comes through your nose, and it's all a result of these chemical compounds that are in food that create flavor. What we've started to realize is that when foods share a lot of these chemical compounds or high concentrations of them, they taste better, or they taste good when you put them together. So when we can look at just the compounds and not think about the things that we know go together, we can start finding new combinations that I would not have stumbled on my own, typically.
Right, and why do you think that is? Is it often now because we live in a world where sort of every ingredient is at our disposal, so we tend to think of things going together sort of because of their cultural histories together, or sort of our shared recipes that we use? Why haven't we sort of seen it this way before?
Yeah, so much of it is based on previous experience, ingredients you've seen go together, stuff from other chefs, from other cultures. You kind of get your combinations from seeing them somewhere.
Right.
Right? And, I think it's a very small, section of chefs, and it's like the greatest chefs who, have that ability to kind of virtually taste and imagine two ingredients together without actually tasting them. Most people can't cook that way. Great chefs, of course, can. So this kind of puts it down on paper, what those chefs have in their head.
Right.
And you can understand how flavor is constructed in ingredients, and then start making smarter choices about how you utilize those ingredients.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought was really cool about this book is a lot of the books that sort of have a science bent are actually harder. You need special equipment, you need, an understanding of science and physics and all sorts of things, that chemistry, that a lot of home cooks would say to themselves, I don't want to get involved in that. What's cool about this book is that for most of the ingredients that you're talking about are often just grocery store, pantry ingredients that just happen to go together and we haven't thought of them. So what do you think are some of the home cook combinations that you were surprised to discover that you think people should be using more?
I think for me, one of my favorites, that's we realize is sort of out there, as far as you've seen it in recipes, avocado and cocoa. Fantastic combination, and often you'll see that in some kind of a healthy avocado chocolate dessert or whatever. But I love to kind of take that and bring it into the savory world, where we're doing cocoa rubbed beef, just a quick grilled flank steak with an avocado salad with some spice and sesame seeds, and all of these just kind of little. We understand that avocado flavors basically comes from the fats in it. And so those fats love big, deep roasted flavors. So you put a grilled steak, you put some cocoa and some dried chili on that, you put some toasted sesame seeds, and you're just amping up all of these flavors. And that's what we try to explain in the book, kind of how you can find just those little bits and then bring them together to make something great.
What were some of the most surprising ingredients to you where you were like, this is never gonna work, and then you tried it and you're like, oh wow, that actually makes sense?
One that we go back to just over and over is chicken with mushrooms and strawberries. If I opened my fridge and looked in and saw chicken and mushrooms and strawberries in my fridge, I would just close the door and be like, all right, we're going out to eat tonight. Because there's no way we're making anything with that tastes good. But then, when we saw the compounds in it and saw how they lined up and wow, this looks like it's a good match.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it a shot. And then, I want to say, all right, let's put it into a really familiar setting. So in the book, the recipe is for a chicken and mushroom burger with strawberry ketchup. And it's delicious.
And I think that that's something that, you know, we lose as we get older. Like when I was a kid, I used to do blueberries in my beef stew, and my family thought I was nuts. But
You
I
were
think
onto something.
I was onto something. Yeah. But I think, like, you know, I see this with my kid all the time, who's like pulling things together. And I think that as we sort of get more rigid as we get older, we sort of think like these things do not go together. And does this kind of help you as you cook to say like, okay, like let's try a few different things, because the notions that we have are often totally incorrect.
Yeah, and they're very limiting, and
Right.
that's, you know,
Yeah.
and over the past years, that's what I've really kind of learned, to approach this creative process of cooking with wiping away preconceived notions of what's supposed to go together. I mean, it's, you know, kind of great to have that in the back of your mind, but come at it completely open, and, you know, like take a bite of a carrot and taste it and think about the flavors that are in a carrot, and think about how, you know, what you're perceiving in that, what you taste in it, and how you can, you know, use that to its fullest. And, you know, it's the citrus and it's the spice notes in the carrot that really, you know, they're not the first thing you taste or the first thing you think of when you take a bite of a carrot, but they're there. And then when you start to kind of, when you see it on a page and then take a bite and you're like, oh yeah, I actually see those. I
Right.
get those little spice notes. I get those little citrus notes. And you're like, okay, so these are great flavors to pair with a carrot. So let me start, you know,
Right.
using these.
Wonderful. Well, the book is The Flavor Matrix. It's so interesting and so different. Thank you so much, Jen, for having
Thank
me here at
you.
ICE. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you,